He's failing, I think. I mean, this is a big problem, and the last 3 Mexican presidents have all failed on security in different ways. I mean, Calderon ultimately failed on security.
Yes, he started it. Yep.
Yeah, Peña Nieto failed. It got worse under. Peña Nieto didn't stop this thing. So it's not just him. He's inheriting a problem, but he is. You need to have leadership with big ideas, with bold ideas, and to say we've got to try and pacify the country. Now, he had the rhetoric saying I want to make peace, but it's not working in reality. Now, my fear is that if you continue to see this, various years of this, then we're going to get a rise in Mexico of a populist right-wing movement, a kind of Brazil type thing or a Philippines type thing. Duterte, the Philippines, Bolsonaro of Brazil, coming in saying, I'm going to clean up the country, I'm going to kill criminals, this is what I'm going to do. Because you could see that happening.
Yes, completely so.
I mean, it's kind of unsustainable. I mean, Julian Lavaron, I've been covering that story recently and was with him on the march. And one thing he said is like, a country can't allow this kind of massacre of its people. And the level of violence now is unacceptable.
Yes, it's more dead. It's more dead than the actual civil war. And then you actually take in the disappearances, and they're a lot more than the dead. The actual dead that we know of are just the people they found. So the disappeared are probably 4 or 5 times that. It's the most of the killings are they kidnap people and then they interrogate them and they get rid of them. So lots of times we don't get to see the bodies. And when you were actually there, were you ever threatened to stop reporting where you were at when you were like let's say with the Zetas and stuff? I've heard they're really hard on journalists and stuff like that out there.
So I've had I mean, it's been a lot of years of a lot of different times, and I've been told to stop in a bunch of times in a bunch of places. I mean, one time I've been accused of being a DEA agent. Time I was in. So once I was in Michoacan. This is in Michoacan actually. It's 2014, and it's around the time of the Autodefensa movement. And I went.
Oh yes.
I covered the Autodefensa movement a lot, and as a reporter, it was generally a fun story to cover. But this particular time, I went down. It was kind of towards the end of the conflict. Really, the main conflict had finished, but they were still mopping up. And I went down to Apatzingán and found about 50 guys in a parking area just outside of Apatzingán. About 50 guys with a lot of heavy guns. I mean, AK-47s, AR-15s, grenade launchers, some big like 50 cals, G3s, a lot of big guns. And as I was chatting with them, and it started off okay, I was like, okay, they were like, oye, güerito, y cuánto cuestan las putas en tu país, güero, y tu gusta el dinero, güero, and it was like this kind of like contorreando with them.
Yeah.
And then they flipped, and I was taking photographs and posing with their guns, and then one of them flipped, and one started accusing me of being a DEA agent. And I said, look, I'm not even American, I'm British. And they said, I showed them my website.
From Brighton Beach, right? From Brighton,
right? Exactly, yeah. Brighton Beach, the UK, exactly, yeah. Stony Brighton Beach. So they showed them my website, and they looked at the website, and the guy was like, if I see you again, I'm going to put a bullet in your head. It's like, te voy a poner la bala de cabeza. He's like, te voy a tirar una papa. I'm going to throw a grenade at you. So I left, and I was still almost like, I was sad to leave because I was like, I wanted to follow this group of people. They went off and they got in a big shootout. I think a lot of them were then cartel affiliated, and also then a bunch of them got killed fighting with the federal police. They were obviously very, very, very openly cartel affiliated. These were not autodefensas. And then other times, I mean, I've been told to leave, told to, driven into areas, and got given a warning saying, get out. Other times, one time phoned up in the hotel I was in. Asked, trying to find out what am I doing there, who am I, what am I doing there. One time followed up in Coahuila, and then we got phoned up contacts in the local state police to come out and get us. So yeah, I mean, it's a rough thing to report, as well as being around some shootouts a couple of times. But I mean, nothing compared to the 120 Mexican journalists who have been murdered since 2000, including a good friend of mine, Javi Valdez, in Culiacan, another colleague who I work with in Patingan, Mauricio Estrada, who was disappeared, and just like so many other journalists, good hardworking journalists who have been killed.
Yeah, it's the war. It's a war of silence, and it's so interesting for me to be able to actually speak to someone who's reporting and is interested in the same conflict that I am right now, because there's not too many people, especially in the English language, who are even speaking on this subject. And what actually drew you into this, to Mexico, to the conflict here? What was that what was it that drew your attention originally?
So going back to 2000, and I didn't know anything about cartels and drugs then. I wasn't thinking about cartels then. I was more attracted by Latin America, by like the glamour and exotic kind of nature of Latin America. And I was kind of interested in the, like more of the kind of Che Guevara story. That was kind of more attracted me. And I saw the movie, kind of cheesy movie when you watch it now, very outdated, but a movie with James Woods from the 1980s, Salvador, where he plays a photographer covering the Salvadoran Civil War back then. And he's kind of a crazy guy on the kind of edge. And I kind of, I want to be that guy. That was the kind of thoughts back then. I had a kind of messed around a bit and had a kind of funny, crazy times a bit in my late teens, early 20s. And then, so I came out, and then right away the drug story kind of hit me. When I first arrived in Mexico City, I started meeting up some first people, and they were like smoking crack. I was like, I didn't know there's a lot, suddenly kind of started seeing this. And then, one of the reasons was because growing up in the UK, I grew up, close to Brighton in the UK. In the 1980s, there were drugs everywhere. So I grew up in
the drug capital of England, right? Actually, drug use, right?
Yeah, it's one of the places with a lot of drugs. Funny enough, a guy who was a big drug trafficker from the UK, Howard Marks, lived around there for a while. His daughter went to my secondary school, and he famously got extradited to the United States and got 25 years in the US prison. Howard Marks, he's kind of one of the most famous British drug traffickers. Nothing compared to people in Latin America, but like anyway, so I grew up with a lot of people taking drugs, a lot of friends taking drugs, later heroin and that kind of thing. I knew a few young teenagers and young men who died of heroin overdoses in that time. So for me, it was kind of easy to make that link between a drug. It was kind of interesting, like a country which there's a lot of drug taking, like mine, and it kind of connecting these worlds. And my community of drug taking is quite similar to many places where they take drugs in the United States, and how this kind of interacts. That was another thing that kind of made me kind of get linked into the story. But as it developed, the moment that really struck me as well was 2008, when I was covering the turf war in Sinaloa. And the one moment that really got me was when I was in a little town outside of Culiacan called El Pozo. And in that town, there'd been 2 massacres there. And afterwards, everyone was leaving the town, like packing up their belongings in pickup trucks and going in a convoy, like leaving. I remember seeing this group of people leaving and thinking, wow, this is a really big thing happening here. This is a big story. This is not just like the glamorous kingpins. This can tear the country apart. That was 2008, and you saw that was when I first then pitched my first book, which took me a while to find a publisher to publish the book, because I was like, I want to publish a big picture story about what this conflict is, what's happening, what is El Narco. And eventually I found a publisher, and then it just got worse. 2009, 2010, crazy year, 2011. And then, we've seen just depressingly carrying on since.
Yeah, you look at what's going on in Michoacan right now. When you talk about people leaving their homes, the people are leaving their homes there by the tens of thousands. In some places, they're just mass It's causing basically like a refugee crisis all over the country, if you want to look at it like that. Basically, a lot of people are being dislocated from their homes and from what was theirs for generations, the land that they've been on, for their grandfather, and someone comes and says this farm isn't yours anymore, it's mine.
Yeah.
That's kind of the world we're living in lots of places in Mexico, and it's really unfortunate because I remember coming here as a kid, it was safer here than the United States. There was less crime here by far when I was a kid coming here, and to see it change.
Yeah, it's funny stories, and like I know one woman who's a daughter of a kind of guy connected to the mob, the kind of mafia in Las Vegas, and years ago, decades ago, when there was heat in Las Vegas, he sent them down to Acapulco to like be safe in Acapulco. Acapulco was safe because there was heat from the mafia in Vegas, and now you wouldn't. It's like, oh, I need to be safe, go to Acapulco. Although I still love Acapulco, it's still a great tourist resort despite everything. But yeah, I mean, it's tragic, and it's like, I mean, maybe we're going to get like the rise of a kind of right-wing populism. Maybe we're just going to carry on in these same kind of circles for a long time. I kind of wanted to see the hope, with the groups like the Javier Cecilia Lavarón, the anti-crime groups, the people coming together trying to say we've got to try and rise up and come together as a society to try and deal with this problem. And it's like, where is that hope? People march, and people have marched again and again. But yeah, difficult to kind of be inspired and to think now as well that in 2004, that turf war in Nuevo Laredo, which was kind of the beginning. I think that was the kind of beginning of this, that 2004 turf war, between the Zetas and Gulf Cartel, and between the Sinaloa Cartel at the time, Beltran Leyva and Chapo. But that was 16 years ago.
Yes.
So kids who were just born then are now like 16, and then they're like hitmen. I mean, the guy Juan Pistolas was a guy killed in Nuevo Laredo. He was literally 16. His head, he was in a hitman. His head was blown off by the military. So he was born. He was just like, not even, just being born when that happened now. So just new generations. I mean, what's happening now? The kids who are 14, 15, 13, growing up in it, like what if their dad was like a cartel boss? I mean, their dad was like a sicario boss or a sicario, and was murdered and committed massive amounts of murder and is in prison. And what's their view of the world going to be? How are they going to interpret this? And that's kind of now. Now we've got how many orphans, how many fatherless children are there? If we look at the official numbers of 250,000 dead in the last 10 years, that's 250,000 almost, like children that have lost a parent.
Yes.
So now, where does this cycle stop, and how can we try and stop this? And that's why, do we legalize drugs? Talk about it at least.
That's the only resolution I see coming out of this. You really can't control what people put in their bodies. It's a losing war, and to think that we're paying this war, in blood on both sides of the border, because in the United States we have these mass opiate deaths and the gang, almost a lot of the homicides and gang violence in the United States are related around drugs as well. So, the drug on both sides of the border, it causes bloodshed in massive amounts. And I don't know how long it's going to take before the actual human cost starts to register with, I don't know if it's the American public or the global public, like on a world scale, actually, to legalize things, because the legalizing things country by country, it's a slow road, and I don't see Mexico wanting to legalize anything, because so many of the politicians and these people are so invested in the drug trade that they'd lose a lot of money legalizing it. It's against their interests. That's the scariest part to me.
I guess we call it drug policy reform. And drug policy reform is the idea that we have to kind of change the drug policies fundamentally. And it doesn't necessarily mean legalizing everything, but it means we're going to look at what drugs can we legalize, what drugs can we work on the addiction treatment a lot better, and just try and reduce the black market. Because right now in the world, if it's $300 billion plus for the drug market every year, I mean, we don't even know, but that's a decent guess. There's another study coming out now that reckons that in the United States alone, the Americans are spending 150 billion a year on drugs. So that's why all that money, this money is pumping in year after year to drug cartels. They get all that money, I mean, that's, pays for all the hitmen, pays for all the guns, pays for all the corruption. It just keeps the process going. So it's like, how do you take this step at a time? So like marijuana now, I mean, when marijuana happened in 2012 in Washington State and Colorado, and that was a big deal. I thought that was the kind of, like, that was really the change. That was like you find the hole in the wall. We're 8 years on. It's kind of been slow since then. I mean, you had a Uruguay, and then you got Canada, and then different things with marijuana. And no other drugs are really on the table. But still, I mean, I feel this conversation, we have to keep having this conversation at least.
Yes.
Part of the conversation. But the other thing is, like, how do you have a real law enforcement? How do you have police which respond to people's needs? I mean, whatever, like, why is it that the nature of Mexican policing is dysfunctional? The Mexican law enforcement is dysfunctional. So because if people have their kid kidnapped, they want to have somebody's going to respond and say, we're going to find your kid. We're going to find, we're going to rescue them and get the bad guys. If somebody comes to your place of business and says, I want a quota and I'm going to make you pay, $2,000 a month just to exist. You want somebody who can defend against that. You've got to have a justice system or a police force or something which can defend people. And why is it dysfunctional? And what can you do to make something which is actually a police responding to people? And that's one of the big challenges. And the other thing is, like, how do you try and help the people out there, the new generation of kids in these neighborhoods who are being recruited?
Yes.
Like when you go to, it could be the slums of Sierra Juarez. It could be the young people in Culiacan, or the young people in Tamaulipas, and the next generation, because the kids who are 10 years old now. If not in 5-10 years, they're gonna be the ones out there doing the same stuff again.
It gets glamorized, just like the violence in the United States with rap music. Here with the corridos, it's gotten glamorized to the youth. It's appealing to them. It is. Yeah. How do you change that? I wonder because it's difficult with, like, say with TV series, like Narcos, the TV series now. A lot of people like that. I enjoy. I used to, as a kid, I used to enjoy watching gangster films. Now I'm kind of almost don't enjoy seeing some of this stuff. It's almost like I can't enjoy it anymore. Me too.
Seeing this kind of you like seeing fuck.
You burnt out. You burnt out on it.
Yeah, I want to go and watch something else to get away. Watch like some like fantasy or science fiction thing, or like fantasy, or to get to escape from this. This is, but like, I don't know, how do you change people's minds? It's difficult. Is it part of a wider issue of people being lost? I mean, do you need religion? I'm agnostic, but I believe in some kind of spirituality. And a lot of sometimes people who do kind of find something, it's like evangelical Christianity. I've interviewed heads of sicarios in prison who've converted to evangelical Christianity, and that's kind of a way they find out. In a way, is that what do we need? I don't know what we need to try and change people's culturally, try and change the chip.